In this video, I'm going to show you the garden at its worst. I've been away for a few weeks working on different jobs and I really haven't been in the garden at all, and so it's looking a bit neglected, but I think it's quite nice to see a garden when it's looking at its worst. We're going to talk about jobs that need to be done and also how important the structure is in a garden. So when it's not looking beautiful, at least the structure holds it together. So here, this is a walkway which goes down to the field, and it's a track really, so it's got hardcore underneath the grass, so lorries and trucks can go on it without doing too much damage. But I've got these these beech balls which run along beside the wall. Now I made these, as you can see, by using several plants together, so it quickly forms a beech ball, and they were planted probably about 4 years ago from tiny little plants, and hopefully they'll get more buxom in time. On this side I've got hazel, lots and lots of hazel, and as soon as the leaves completely fall I'll cut some nice long wands, and then I'll make lovely arches and things to train roses and beans and things up for next year. It's important to cut your hazel when the leaves are off it, and then they last much longer. Right, I'm going to go and show you the next bit, which is the orchard. So this is the orchard, and obviously the leaves need to be raked off the longer grass. This is the longer grass and wildflower meadow, and also from the box hedge, because I don't want to get any more blight on it. And I think if you leave the leaves on, it does encourage the fungal spores because it keeps it quite damp. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to plant many more bulbs in here shortly. I've left it rather late, but so be it. And I'm also going to sow some yellow rattle, and that is an annual which parasitizes the grass, so it makes it grow less strongly, so the wildflowers get more chance to really perform. Now some people think it's amazing. I think it does help, but it's not, if you've got really rich soil, it will not weaken the grass to that extent. It is quite difficult to germinate. It needs a cold winter treatment, so that's why I'm going to sow it fairly shortly, and then when it's had a bit of cold, hopefully it'll germinate and then come on and flower next summer. But the orchard is a nice place. I can hear the pigs grunting in the background there in the sty behind me and in the wood behind me. It has lots of bulbs and wildflowers. It has the mown paths up to the chickens and the pigs, and it's had a big problem with moles this year, so we put out some traps and hopefully the grass will come back through quite soon. I'm now going to show you my veg garden. So I've just been taking out all the canes for the runner beans and things like that here, and again leaves are everywhere. It's looking a bit sparse now, which worries me, because I like to keep my vegetable garden with the soil completely covered all year round, especially in the winter, because otherwise the rain actually reduces the structure in the soil, it leaches out all the nutrients, so you really want something growing in the soil just to hold it together. And I've got lots of broad beans, which I sowed a bit late this year, coming on in the greenhouse. I've put some onion sets in, some garlic. I've got some more brassicas to go in here, some kales and things. So, and I've got lots of lovely mange too growing well in the other bit of veg over there. So I like to have my vegetable garden as full as possible all over the winter months. This garden's going to get a lot of attention this winter. Originally I put these limestone panets or sets all the way around the paving, and they're English limestone. Now often English limestone is not totally frost durable. These came from Clipsham and the supplier assured me they were. So we probably put them down 15-20 years ago, but over the years they do spore. You can see they've actually sort of blown, so they are not frost hardy. He did replace a load, but then since then they've gone. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually take the ones out that are blown and replace them with these, which is Indian stone. So what I'll do is I'll take out the good ones from the back edge, and then I'll use them to replace the ones around here, and I'll put the limestone in around the back edge because it's slightly less noticeable, I think. They will look not so weathered as the original, so they will show for a bit, but that's life. So this garden really needs a lot of titivating. It needs some dead heading. You see these cannas are just going over. These are canna iridiflora. They're the hardy cannas. So I'll do a lot of dead heading with my secateurs. I will also mulch everything really thoroughly. For the cannas, which could be tender if there's a hard frost, and also for the dahlias, I will put mounds of mulch on those to keep them nice and snug so they survive over the winter. And the box hedging, which if it were mature around the edges of the bed would really show and look good now, but because we replaced it about 1.5 years ago with the blight resistant box, it's really not showing like a proper well-formed hedge yet. So this garden is looking depressed and in need of lots of TLC, but hopefully in a couple of months we'll have got on top of it, we'll have replaced the stone sets and it will be looking a lot better. So in this garden there's quite a bit of structure. We've got the beautiful evergreen oaks which are looking nice. I do need to give them a little bit of trim up so they're really pristine over winter. The Pictorial meadows, which I put amongst the little lavender plants here to give some more instant effect, have actually really come into their own now. Behind me you can see lots and lots of white flowers. I will add in more alliums here I think for next spring, and I will just sort of rake up the leaves. On the main gravel in the yard I've got quite a few leaves germinating now. We've had a really wet period after a long dry period, and so all the seeds have suddenly germinated, so I'll be on my hands and knees getting rid of these. But we might put some Christmas lights in these lovely evergreen oaks this year, I don't know. But I think this area is coming on really nicely and it's one of my favourite areas now. So in this garden, what we call the walled garden, which is really partially hedged, we've got quite a lot of work to do this winter. The hornbeams are all quite high. They're just that bit too high for me to reach with my long reach hedge clippers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out these metal posts. We've taken out about half already, which we used for the wires along there to train the trees up on initially. And I'm going to actually reduce the height of the trees by about 1 foot, and I'll just be able to reach them, so it will make it a much easier job. It's going to be quite a job. I'll need to use a chainsaw just to take the tops out. I'll do it obviously when the leaves are off and when they're not starting to grow, otherwise they would bleed massively. But then I am left with a lot of these lovely metal poles, and we're working on a garden in Peterborough and we're going to make quite a modern pergola from them, probably by putting 2 poles quite close together and then poles across, and maybe finishing them with something like an antique bronze colour or something like that. It's going to be a really modern garden, so I'm looking forward to doing that. But this garden the structure is very strong here, and so if it is neglected, it doesn't look too bad. So this is the new rose meadow, and I fully expect this to look not so good over the winter months, but actually now I think it's looking not bad at all really. It's so filled out, and what is one of the stars of the show now are these little foxgloves, and they're a perennial foxglove, and well, short-lived perennial, and they seed massively and they self-seed true to seed, so you get these lovely little neat bells of creamy pale yellowy flowers, and I see their seedlings everywhere. The Rosa mutabilis, which was from cuttings or 1.5 years ago, you see they're nice big bushes, they're that sort of size, and they've still got some bud on them now and they're flowering. The yew topiary is coming underway quite nicely. The hazel's grown right back up quite massively, if you think it's only been in a few months, and by the end of next year the hazel will definitely be over the top of the arches. So I will put in some more bulbs here, I think. I've got lots of cuttings going on in the greenhouse of other plants that I'm going to stud in here, but I'm beginning to wonder if I'm going to run out of room. Actually, I think I've overdone it a bit, but it's always nice because I can go and use the plants somewhere else. But yeah, the rose meadow is looking nice. I'm waiting to see when it's looking really bad when it's really lean time, but it's a matter of getting enough evergreen structure in here, enough balls and topiary, enough evergreen grasses like this ludula, so it does hold together during the winter months. And then obviously its peak time of glory is in the spring and summer with the bulbs and the roses. My working garden is looking a bit desolate at the moment. Lots of weeds in the gravel, so again another hands and knees job where I might use a Dutch hoe on these. Artichokes grow massively back from cutting back at the end of summer, but I've got a lot of lovely little plants there that are waiting to go out in the garden, including lots of Rosa Murray Pavey to go in the orchard tubs. And my greenhouses are full of vegetable seeds. My beans, lots of hardy annuals are in there ready to go out in the borders. So they're bristling full. The tomatoes will stay in the greenhouses until Christmas because we're still picking. And then as soon as they go out, I'll move in all my tender plants like my citrus and things. And hopefully it doesn't get too cold before then, otherwise I'll just have to ram them into and it will be really chock-a-block. But it's a bit of a judging game to make sure I get them under cover before it gets too cold. This is a very simple garden. We've just got the sitting area along by the house, which is quite busy, and then simple green lawn, simple cut hedges with the balls leading onto the field with the ha-ha from the old telegraph poles between. But although it's simple, it does still change. What I hate about some garden areas is they're really static, but it does change in the fact that the meadow and the landscape, which is really the high point of this garden, and the cattle of course, change. You see the seasons coming in, you see the differences in the meadow, the difference in the hedge line at the bottom by the stream, the fields and the woods in the background. And for me, that is the wonderful bit of this garden. So even if this garden is neglected, and you can see it is now, the grass needs cutting, the piers, the hedgerows and everything still holds it together, and maybe this is my favourite garden. I'm never sure which it is, but I do like this garden very much because of just the natural countryside behind. So there we are. When you're looking at your garden at this time of year, don't be dejected. It often does look a bit neglected if you haven't had time, and it seems to be a busy time of year for everyone. But if you can get your structure in there so that there are pieces of interest to hold you, like shaped hedges, like evergreen trees, obelisks, pergolas, things like that, if you've got some structure that holds it together, then I think it really makes it interesting and keeps it interesting throughout the year. And maybe just think where you could weave some structure in to your garden just to keep that element a bit more interesting.